I stood in the middle of the boutique, surrounded by mirrors that reflected every angle of the dress clinging to my body. The ivory silk cascaded over my curves, the delicate lace tracing patterns that seemed to whisper stories of old romance. It was perfect, not just a dress, but the dress. The one I'd dreamed of since I was a girl sketching gowns in the margins of my math notebook. I turned slowly, watching the train sweep across the polished floor, and caught my reflection smiling back at me. For the first time in months, I felt like a bride. Not just any bride. Ethan's bride. Ethan. The thought of him made my chest tighten with a warmth I couldn't explain. We'd met 3 years ago at a coffee shop, both reaching for the same mislabeled latte. His laugh, low and unassuming, had hooked me first. Then his eyes, green like sea glass, held me captive. He was steady, kind, the kind of man who'd hold your hand through a storm and never let go. When he proposed 6 months ago under a sky full of stars, I didn't hesitate. I said yes before he even finished the question. But planning a wedding isn't just about love, is it? It's about family, too. And Ethan's family, his mother, Diane, and his sister Claire, had been a storm I hadn't anticipated. From the moment we announced our engagement, they'd been involved. Diane insisted on hosting the engagement party at their sprawling estate, a place that screamed old money with its manicured lawns and chandeliers. Claire, meanwhile, had opinions on everything. My ring, too simple, the venue, too modern, even my choice of florist, too pedestrian. I brushed it off. I loved Ethan, and that meant loving his family too. Or at least tolerating them. The boutique's owner, a petite woman named Margot with a French accent, adjusted the veil on my head. "You look like a vision, Amelia," she said, her eyes sparkling. "This dress was made for you." I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. "It's everything I wanted." "Then it's settled," Margot said, clapping her hands. "We'll have it tailored and ready for the final fitting next week." As I slipped out of the dress and back into my jeans, my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Can't wait to see you in that dress. I know you'll be breathtaking." I smiled, my heart doing that little flip it always did when he messaged me. But then another text came through, this one from Claire. "Hey, Mom and I want to throw a little pre-wedding surprise for you tomorrow. Be at the house at 3? I frowned. A surprise? Diane and Claire weren't exactly the warm and fuzzy type. Their idea of a surprise was probably a lecture on proper table settings or a PowerPoint about their family's expectations for the wedding. Still, I typed back, "Sounds great. I'll be there." I wanted to keep the peace. For Ethan. The next day, I pulled up to the Hawthorne estate, a mansion that looked like it belonged in a period drama. The gravel crunched under my tires as I parked my modest sedan next to Claire's gleaming BMW. I took a deep breath, smoothing my sweater, and walked up to the massive front door. Before I could knock, Claire flung it open, her blonde hair bouncing as she grinned. "Amelia, you're here! Come in, come in!" Her enthusiasm was disarming. Maybe I'd misjudged her. Maybe this was her way of welcoming me into the family. Diane appeared behind her, her smile tight but polite. "Amelia, dear, you look casual," she said, her eyes flicking over my outfit. I ignored the jab. Diane's idea of casual was a tailored blazer and pearls. They led me through the house, past oil paintings and antique furniture, to a sitting room I hadn't seen before. It was cozy, with a fireplace crackling and a tray of tea and scones on the table. But what caught my eye was the garment bag draped over a velvet chaise. My heart stopped. It was my garment bag, the one from Margot's boutique. "What's this?" I asked, my voice light but my stomach twisting. "Oh, just a little surprise," Claire said, her grin widening. "We thought it'd be fun to see you in your dress. You know, a private reveal. Just us girls," I hesitated. I'd wanted the first time Ethan saw me in the dress to be at the altar. But Claire was already unzipping the bag, and Diane was pouring tea, acting like this was the most normal thing in the world. "Go on, dear," Diane said. "Try it on." Against my better judgment, I agreed. I slipped into a guest room to change, the silk cool against my skin. When I stepped out, Claire clapped, and even Diane's eyes softened for a moment. "You do look lovely," Diane admitted, though her tone carried a hint of reluctance. Then Claire's grin turned mischievous. "Okay, now for the real surprise." She darted to a side table and pulled out a pair of scissors. My heart lurched. "What are you doing?" I asked, stepping back. "Oh, relax," Claire said, laughing. "It's just a little prank. We're going to make this dress unique." Before I could react, she snipped at the train, a jagged cut tearing through the silk. I gasped, lunging forward, but Diane grabbed my arm. "It's just a joke, Amelia. Don't be so dramatic." "A joke?" My voice shook as Claire snipped again, this time slicing through the lace on the bodice. The sound of tearing fabric echoed in my ears, each cut a stab to my heart. "Stop, please, stop!" I begged, but Claire just laughed, and Diane's grip tightened. "It's tradition in our family," Diane said coolly. "A little test for the bride. If you can't handle a prank, how will you handle being a Hawthorne?" Tears burned my eyes as I watched my dream dress, my perfect, beautiful dress, turn into a shredded mess. Claire finally stepped back, tossing the scissors onto the table. "There, now it's one of a kind." I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. I tore myself from Diane's grip and ran to the guest room, locking the door behind me. My hands trembled as I peeled off the ruined dress, the fabric catching on my skin like it was clinging to me for help. I sank to the floor, clutching the remnants, and let the tears come. They thought this was funny. A prank. They thought they could humiliate me, break me, and call it a test. I wiped my face, my sadness hardening into something else, something sharp and resolute. They didn't know me. They didn't know what I was capable of, because I had a secret, one I'd kept from Ethan, from his family, from everyone. I wasn't just Amelia, the quiet girl who'd fallen in love with their golden boy. I was Amelia Voss, heiress to a fortune my parents had left me, a fortune I'd hidden to live a normal life. A fortune that could buy and sell the Hawthorne estate 10 times over. As I sat there, surrounded by the tattered remains of my dress, I made a decision. They wanted to play games? Fine, I'd play, but I'd play to win. I drove home with the ruined dress in the back seat, its garment bag now a mockery of what it had held. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached, and the road blurred through the tears I refused to let fall again. Claire's laughter still rang in my ears, sharp and cruel, like a blade slicing through the memory of that perfect moment in the boutique. Diane's cold justification, a little test for the bride, twisted in my gut. They thought they'd broken me. They thought I'd crumble, maybe even call off the wedding. They were wrong. By the time I pulled into my apartment's parking lot, the shock had burned away, leaving a fire in its place. I wasn't the fragile girl they assumed I was. I'd spent years hiding who I really was, blending into a life of modest apartments and secondhand furniture, because I wanted to be loved for me, not for the money sitting in a trust fund I hadn't touched since I was 18. But now I was done hiding. I carried the garment bag inside and laid it on my couch, unzipping it to assess the damage. The train was in tatters, jagged cuts exposing the delicate underlayers. The lace bodice, once intricate and elegant, hung in strips. It was unsalvageable. I traced my fingers over the fabric, my heart aching for the dream it had represented. But as I stared at the wreckage, an idea began to form, a plan, sharp and dangerous, like the scissors Claire had wielded. I grabbed my phone and called Ethan. He answered on the second ring, his voice warm and steady. "Hey, love. How'd the surprise go?" I swallowed the urge to tell him everything. Ethan adored his family, flaws and all. He'd laugh off their prank as harmless, maybe even defend them. I couldn't risk that, not yet. "It was something," I said, keeping my tone light. "Just girl stuff. I'll tell you later. Can we meet tomorrow?" "I need to see you." "Of course," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "How about lunch at that little bistro you love?" "Perfect," I said. "I love you." "Love you too, Amelia." I hung up and sat in the quiet of my apartment, the weight of my secret pressing against me. Ethan didn't know about my fortune. I'd planned to tell him after the wedding, when we were settled into our life together. I wanted him to marry me for me, not for the billions tied to my name. But Diane and Claire had changed the game. They'd made it personal, and if they wanted to play dirty, I'd show them I could play dirtier. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I opened my laptop and logged into the account I hadn't touched in years. the one linked to the Voss family trust. My parents, gone since I was 16, had left me everything, a fortune built on real estate, investments, and a tech empire that still generated wealth I couldn't fathom. I'd walked away from it, choosing a quiet life as a graphic designer, but the money was still there, waiting. And now, it was time to use it. I made a call to my financial advisor, a man named Harold, who'd managed the trust since my parents' passing. He answered with his usual brisk professionalism. "Amelia, it's been a while. What can I do for you?" "I need access to liquid funds," I said. "A significant amount. And I want it discreet." "How significant?" he asked, his tone unshaken. He'd heard stranger requests from me over the years. "Enough to make a statement," I replied. "I'll send you the details." After the call, I drove to the bistro to meet Ethan. He was already there, sitting at our favorite table by the window, his dark hair catching the sunlight. When he saw me, his face lit up, and for a moment I forgot the anger burning inside me. He stood to hug me, his arms strong and familiar. "You okay?" he asked, pulling back to study my face. "You seem off," I forced a smile. "Just wedding stress. You know how it is." He nodded, but his eyes lingered on me, searching. "If my mom and sister are being too much, just tell me. I'll talk to them." I almost laughed. Talk to them? Diane and Claire didn't respect anyone's boundaries, least of all Ethan's. But I shook my head. "It's fine. I can handle them." We ordered lunch, and as we ate, I steered the conversation to the wedding. "I was thinking," I said casually, "what if we upgraded a few things? The venue, maybe, or the catering. Something to make it unforgettable." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "I thought you wanted to keep it simple." "I did," I said, stirring my coffee. "But I've been saving up. I want this to be special. For us." He reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "As long as you're there, it'll be perfect. But if you want to go big, I'm in." I smiled, but inside, my mind was racing. This wasn't about making the wedding bigger. It was about sending a message. Diane and Claire thought they could control me, humiliate me, because they saw me as beneath them. They had no idea who they were dealing with. That afternoon, I met with Margot at the boutique. Her face fell when she saw the ruined dress. "Mon Dieu," she whispered, touching the shredded lace. "What happened?" "A misunderstanding," I said, my voice steady. "But I need a new dress. Something extraordinary. Money's no object." Margot's eyes widened, but she recovered quickly. "I have a designer in Paris. She creates one-of-a-kind gowns. If you're serious about the budget, I can have her here by next week." "Do it," I said, "and I want it kept quiet. No one knows but us." As Margot made calls, I stepped outside and dialed another number, this one for a private investigator I'd found through a discreet recommendation. "I need information," I told the man who answered. "On Diane and Claire Hawthorne, everything. Business dealings, personal habits, anything that can be leveraged." "Understood," he said. "Timeline?" "As soon as possible." I hung up, feeling a thrill I hadn't expected. This wasn't just about replacing a dress or throwing a lavish wedding. This was about power. Diane and Claire had tried to strip me of mine, but they'd underestimated me. I wasn't just Ethan's fiancée. I was Amelia Voss, and I was about to turn their world upside down. By the end of the week, the pieces were falling into place. Margot confirmed the designer was flying in with sketches. Harold sent me access to a new account with more money than I'd ever needed, and the investigator emailed a preliminary report. Diane's real estate business was over-leveraged, and Claire's influencer career was propped up by family money. They weren't as untouchable as they thought. I stood in my apartment, staring at the ruined dress still draped over my couch. It wasn't just fabric, it was a symbol of their cruelty, but it was also my catalyst. They'd pushed me, and now I was pushing back. The wedding was 3 weeks away, and I had work to do. The air in my apartment felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. I sat at my kitchen table, the investigator's report open on my laptop. Its pages a map of Diane and Claire's vulnerabilities. Diane's real estate empire, built on her late husband's name, was a house of cards. Overextended loans, properties sitting unsold, and whispers of shady deals to keep the cash flowing. Claire, meanwhile, was a carefully curated illusion, Her Instagram following, her brand, was propped up by paid bots and her mother's connections. Without the Hawthorne name, she was nothing. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. They'd tried to cut me down, but they'd handed me the tools to dismantle them. I wasn't cruel by nature. Growing up with wealth, I'd seen how it twisted people, turned them into versions of themselves they barely recognized. That's why I'd walked away from the Voss fortune, choosing a life where I could be Amelia, not the heiress. But Diane and Claire had crossed a line, and I wasn't going to let them walk over me. This wasn't revenge, it was justice, dressed in silk and laced with strategy. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. A text from Margot. Designer arrives tomorrow. She's bringing 3 exclusive gowns. Can you meet at 10? I replied with a quick yes and set the phone down. The new dress was the first step, a symbol of my refusal to be broken. But it was only the beginning. I needed to move carefully, keep Ethan in the dark until the moment was right. He loved his family, flaws and all, and I didn't want to hurt him. But I also couldn't let Diane and Claire think they'd won. The next morning, I arrived at the boutique, where Margot greeted me with a glass of champagne and a conspiratorial smile. "You're going to love this," she said, leading me to a private room. The designer, a striking woman named Elise with a sharp Parisian accent, stood beside a rack of 3 gowns, each more breathtaking than the last. One was a sleek column of pearl-encrusted satin, another a flowing chiffon dream with hand-stitched roses, and the third a bold, structured gown with a plunging neckline and a train that seemed to go on forever. They were nothing like the delicate lace dress Diane and Claire had destroyed. These were statements, each one screaming power. "Try this one first," Elise said, gesturing to the structured gown. I slipped into it, the fabric molding to my body like it had been crafted for me alone. When I stepped in front of the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman staring back was fierce, unyielding, a queen, not a pawn. Margot clapped softly, and Elise nodded in approval. "This is you," she said. "This is the dress," I agreed. It was perfect, not just for the wedding, but for the message I wanted to send. "How soon can it be ready?" I asked. "With rush alterations, 1 week," Elise replied. "It'll cost, but money's not an issue," I cut in. "Just make it flawless." As I left the boutique, my phone rang. It was the investigator, his voice low and steady. "I've got something you'll want to see," he said. "Can you meet today?" An hour later, I sat across from him in a nondescript coffee shop, a manila envelope between us. He slid it toward me. "Diane's been skimming from her company's accounts," he said. "Not enough to raise red flags, but enough to fund Claire's lifestyle and keep up appearances. There's also a property deal, shady, off the books, that could land her in hot water if it gets out." I opened the envelope, scanning the documents. Bank statements, email exchanges, even a grainy photo of Diane meeting with a known fixer in the real estate world. It was more than I'd expected. "And Claire?" I asked. "She's less careful," he said. "Posts everything online, even the stuff she shouldn't." I found a thread on a private forum. Her talking about how she tested you with the dress. "She's bragging about it." My jaw tightened. "Bragging?" He nodded. "She thinks it's hilarious. Called you a nobody who needed to be put in her place." I leaned back, the words sinking in. A nobody. That's what they saw me as. Ethan's charity case. The girl who didn't belong in their world. They had no idea I could buy their world and burn it down. "Keep digging," I told him. "I want everything you can find." That night, I met Ethan for dinner at his apartment. He'd cooked. Pasta with a sauce he'd spent hours perfecting. And the warmth of his smile almost made me forget the war I was waging. Almost. As we ate, he reached for my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "You've been quiet lately," he said. "Everything okay?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to tell him about the dress, about his mother and sister's cruelty. But I couldn't, not yet. He'd try to fix it, talk to them, and they'd spin it as a misunderstanding. I needed to handle this my way. "Just nervous about the wedding," I said, forcing a smile. "It's a lot." He squeezed my hand. "You don't have to do this alone, you know. We're a team." "I know," I said, and I meant it. Ethan was my anchor, the one thing grounding me in this storm. But even he couldn't know the full scope of what I was planning. Not yet. Over the next few days, I moved like a chess player, positioning my pieces. I called Harold, my financial advisor, and instructed him to quietly buy up shares in Diane's company through a series of shell corporations. By the time I was done, I'd have a controlling interest, enough to pull the strings without her ever knowing it was me. I also reached out to a contact at a high-end event planning firm, one known for orchestrating weddings that made headlines. I want something unforgettable, I told her. The kind of wedding people talk about for years. She didn't disappoint. By the end of the week, she'd secured a new venue, a historic estate on the coast, far grander than the country club Diane had insisted on. The catering would come from a Michelin-starred chef, the flowers from a designer who'd done royal weddings. Every detail was a deliberate escalation, a flex of the wealth I'd kept hidden. Diane and Claire wanted to play games. I'd show them what it meant to lose. But I wasn't just planning a wedding, I was building a trap. The investigator sent me another update. Claire had been reckless with her mother's money, funneling it into a failing side hustle, a boutique that was bleeding cash. I made a note to buy it out from under her anonymously. Let her think she'd lost it to a faceless investor. Let her feel the ground shift beneath her. As the days passed, I felt myself changing. The quiet, accommodating Amelia was still there, but she was layered with something new, something sharp and unyielding. I looked at the new dress, now hanging in my closet, and saw it for what it was, armor. The wedding was 2 weeks away, and I was ready to step into the battlefield. The morning sun spilled through my apartment window, casting a golden glow over the new dress hanging in its protective cover. It was a masterpiece, structured, bold, and unapologetic, just like the woman I was becoming. I ran my fingers along the garment bag, feeling the weight of what it represented. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. It was about reclaiming my power, about showing Diane and Claire that I wasn't the nobody they'd mocked. The fire in my chest burned hotter every day, fueled by their betrayal and my own resolve. I sipped my coffee and opened my laptop, checking the latest updates from Harold. He'd executed my instructions flawlessly. Through a web of anonymous entities, I now held a 51% stake in Diane's real estate company. She didn't know it yet, but I could pull the rug out from under her with a single phone call. The investigator had sent more dirt, too. A paper trail linking Diane to a questionable offshore account, and Claire to a string of unpaid debts tied to her boutique. Every piece of information was a weapon, and I was collecting an arsenal. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Lunch today? Missed you this week. Guilt tugged at me. I'd been distant, consumed by my plans, and Ethan didn't deserve to be caught in the crossfire. But I couldn't stop now. I replied, "Can't today, love. Work's crazy." "Dinner tomorrow?" He sent back a heart emoji, and I set the phone down, my resolve hardening. I'd make it up to him after the wedding, when the dust settled and Diane and Claire were left scrambling. The event planner, Sophia, called that afternoon with updates. "The estate is secured," she said, her voice brimming with excitement. "We've got the chef, the florist, and a string quartet from Vienna. I've also arranged for a custom lighting design. Think chandeliers glowing over the ocean at sunset. It's going to be magical, Amelia." "It needs to be more than magical," I said. "It needs to be unforgettable. I want every guest to leave that wedding feeling like they witnessed something historic." Sophia paused, then chuckled. "You're not messing around, are you?" "Not even a little," I replied. After the call, I drove to the boutique to meet Elise for the final fitting. The dress fit like a glove, its weight grounding me as I stood before the mirror. Elise adjusted the train, her hands precise and reverent. "This gown," she said, "is a statement. You walk into a room in this, and no one will look away." "That's the idea," I said, meeting my own gaze in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the same Amelia who'd cried over a shredded dress 2 weeks ago. She was sharper, stronger, ready to play the game Diane and Claire had started. As I left the boutique, my phone rang. It was Claire. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the decline button, but curiosity won out. "Amelia," she chirped, her voice dripping with false warmth. "We haven't talked since the surprise. You're not mad, are you? It was just a silly prank." I clenched my jaw. forcing my tone to stay even. No, Claire. Not mad at all. Just busy with wedding stuff. Oh, good, she said, oblivious to the ice in my voice. Mom and I were thinking we should host a bridal shower for you. To make up for the dress thing. Something small at the estate. What do you say? A bridal shower? Another chance to parade me around, to assert their control. I could see it now. Diane's tight smiles, Claire's backhanded compliments, the subtle digs disguised as jokes. But I wasn't the same woman they'd ambushed. Sure, I said, my mind already racing. That sounds lovely, great, Claire said. Saturday, 2 p.m., wear something nice. I hung up and immediately called Sophia. Change of plans, I said. I want to host my own bridal shower. Same day, same time at the new venue. Invite everyone. Ethan's family, my friends, the whole guest list. Make it extravagant. Sophia didn't miss a beat. Consider it done. Anything else? Yes, I said. Send Diane and Claire a special invitation. Make it clear they're expected. I could almost hear her grin through the phone. You're playing a dangerous game, Amelia. They started it, I said. I'm just finishing it. The rest of the week was a blur of preparation. Sophia worked miracles, transforming the coastal estate into a vision of opulence for the shower. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, tables overflowed with orchids and peonies, and a champagne fountain bubbled in the center of the room. I chose a sleek emerald green dress for the occasion. Not white, not bridal, but commanding. It was a deliberate choice, a signal that I wasn't playing by their rules. Saturday arrived, and I stood at the entrance of the estate, watching guests arrive. My friends from my old life, before I'd hidden my wealth, hugged me tightly, their eyes wide at the grandeur. Ethan's extended family milled about, whispering about the venue, the food, the sheer scale of it all. I smiled, playing the gracious host, but my eyes kept flicking to the door, waiting for Diane and Claire. They arrived late, of course. Diane swept in first, her designer dress impeccable but her expression sour. Claire followed, her phone already out, snapping photos for her followers. When they saw me, their smiles faltered. Amelia, Diane said, her voice tight. This is unexpected. Surprises are fun, aren't they? I said, my tone sweet but laced with steel. I thought it was time I took charge of my own celebration. Claire's eyes narrowed, but she plastered on a grin. Cute, but you could have told us. We had plans for you. I'm sure you did, I said, gesturing to the room, but this felt more me. Enjoy yourselves. I turned away, leaving them to stew in their confusion. The shower was a triumph. Laughter, music, toasts from friends who knew the real me, not the version Diane and Claire had tried to define. But beneath the celebration, I was watching them. Diane's jaw clenched every time someone complimented the event. Claire's posts grew frantic, her captions dripping with forced enthusiasm. They were rattled, and I hadn't even played my biggest cards yet. That night, as I drove home, my phone buzzed with a text from the investigator. Found something big on Diane. Call me. I pulled over, my heart pounding, and dialed his number. What is it? I asked. It's about that offshore account, he said. It's not just shady. It's tied to a fraud case the feds are sniffing around. If this gets out, Diane's done. I leaned back in my seat, the night air cool against my skin. Send me everything, I said. And keep it quiet. The wedding was 10 days away. Diane and Claire thought they'd humiliated me, but they'd only awakened me. I wasn't just fighting for a dress or a day. I was fighting for my place, my voice, my future. And I was going to win. The folder from the investigator sat on my kitchen counter, its contents a ticking bomb. I hadn't opened it yet, but the weight of what it held pressed against me. Diane's offshore account wasn't just a financial misstep. It was a potential criminal liability, one that could unravel her carefully curated empire. I'd spent years avoiding the power my wealth gave me, but now it felt like a blade I'd sharpened just for this moment. I wasn't sure yet how I'd use it, but knowing it was there gave me a sense of control I hadn't felt since Claire's scissors tore through my dress. The bridal shower had been a victory, a public flex of my resources that left Diane and Claire visibly shaken. I'd seen it in their eyes, confusion, then unease, as they realized I wasn't the pushover they'd assumed. But I wasn't done. The wedding was a week away, and every move I made now was a step toward the checkmate I'd been planning since that day at their estate. I met Sophia at the coastal venue to finalize details. The estate was even more stunning in person than in the photos she'd sent. Perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean, its stone walls and sprawling gardens screamed old-world grandeur. As we walked through the ballroom, Sophia rattled off updates. The chef had finalized a menu featuring lobster and truffle risotto. The florist was crafting centerpieces that rivaled art installations, and a custom chandelier was being installed to cast a galaxy of light across the dance floor. "This is going to be the wedding of the decade," Sophia said, her eyes gleaming. "You're sure about the guest list? It's extensive." "Positive," I said. I'd invited everyone. Ethan's family, my old friends, even distant acquaintances from my pre-wealth days. I wanted witnesses. I wanted the world to see what I was capable of. "And the press?" I asked. "Discreet, as you requested," Sophia replied. "A few carefully selected reporters from high-end magazines. They'll cover the event without making it feel like a media circus." Good. I needed the story to spread, but on my terms. Diane and Claire thrived on their social status. I'd use it against them. Let the world see their fall from grace when the time came. As we toured the grounds, my phone buzzed with a call from Ethan. "Hey, love," he said, his voice warm but tinged with concern. "My mom's been acting weird since the shower. She keeps asking how we're paying for all this. I told her you've been saving, but is there something I should know?" My stomach twisted. Ethan was too perceptive, and I hated keeping him in the dark. But I couldn't tell him the truth, not yet. If he knew about my fortune, he'd ask questions, and if he knew about his family's betrayal, he'd confront them. I needed to control the narrative. "Just some last-minute wedding surprises," I said, forcing a laugh. "You know I like to keep things interesting." He chuckled, but it sounded strained. "Okay, but you'd tell me if something was wrong, right?" "Of course," I lied, hating myself for it. "I love you, Ethan. Trust me. Everything's going to be perfect." "I love you too," he said, and I could hear the smile return to his voice. "Can't wait to see you in that dress." I hung up, my chest tight. Ethan was my heart, my reason for everything. This wasn't just about Diane and Claire. It was about protecting what we had, ensuring our future wasn't tainted by their cruelty. But the deeper I went, the harder it was to shield him from the fallout. That evening, I finally opened the investigator's folder. The documents were meticulous. Bank records, emails, even a recorded conversation between Diane and her fixer, discussing how to reallocate funds to cover a failing project. The offshore account was the key, a slush fund tied to a shell company that could be traced back to her if the right people started digging. I leaned back, my mind racing. Exposing her could ruin her, but it would also hurt Ethan. I needed a way to use this without destroying the man I loved. The next day, I met with Harold to discuss my next move. "I want to buy Claire's boutique," I said. Anonymously. Make it look like a hostile takeover. Harold raised an eyebrow but didn't question me. "It's doable," he said. "The boutique's already underwater. A cash offer through a third party will snap it up before she knows what hit her." "What's the endgame?" "I want her to feel what it's like to lose something she loves," I said. "She took my dress. I'll take her dream." Harold nodded, jotting notes. "And Diane's company? You've got controlling interest now. What's the plan?" "I'm not ready to pull that trigger yet," I said. "But I want options. Can you set up a meeting with her board?" "Discreetly, through one of the shell companies. I want them nervous." "Consider it done," he said. "Anything else?" "Yes," I said, leaning forward. "I want to create a charitable foundation in my parents' name. Something public. Something that'll make waves. Announce it at the wedding." Harold's eyes softened. "Your parents would be proud, Amelia. How much are you thinking?" "Enough to make headlines," I said. $100 million to start." He didn't blink. "I'll have the paperwork ready by the end of the week." As I left his office, I felt a strange mix of exhilaration and dread. The plan was coming together, but the stakes were higher than ever. I was walking a tightrope, balancing my love for Ethan with my need to make Diane and Claire pay. One wrong move, and I could lose everything. The next few days were a whirlwind. Elise delivered the dress, now perfectly tailored, and I tried it on one last time, feeling its power settle over me like a second skin. Sophia sent photos of the venue, now transformed into a fairy tale brought to life. The investigator emailed another update. Claire had posted a cryptic rant on a private forum, whining about the bridal shower and calling me uppity. It only fueled my fire. Then, 2 days before the wedding, Diane called. Her voice was syrupy, but I could hear the edge beneath it. "Amelia, dear, I hear you've changed the venue. And the catering? Really? You should have consulted us. This is a family affair." I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Don't worry, Diane, it's all under control. You and Claire just show up and enjoy." There was a pause, then a forced laugh. "Of course. We're so excited." I hung up, my pulse racing. They were nervous. Good. They should be. The night before the wedding, I sat alone in my apartment, the dress hanging like a sentinel in the corner. I thought of my parents, of the life they'd built, and the legacy they'd left me. I thought of Ethan, his laugh, his steady hands, the way he made me feel safe. And I thought of Diane and Claire, their smug faces as they shredded my dream. Tomorrow I'd walk down the aisle, not just as a bride, but as a force. They'd tried to break me, but they'd only made me stronger. The morning of the wedding dawned with a sky so clear it felt like a promise. I stood in the bridal suite of the coastal estate, the ocean's rhythmic crash filtering through the open windows. The air smelled of salt and peonies, and the room buzzed with quiet efficiency. Hairdressers, makeup artists, and Sophia, my event planner, orchestrating every detail with the precision of a conductor. My new dress hung on a gilded rack, its pearl-encrusted satin catching the light like a beacon. I hadn't slept much, but I didn't feel tired. I felt alive, electric, like every nerve in my body was tuned to a single purpose. Today wasn't just about marrying Ethan. It was about rewriting the narrative Diane and Claire had tried to impose on me. They'd seen me as weak, a nobody to be toyed with. Today, they'd see the truth. My best friend, Lena, adjusted my veil, her eyes misty as she stepped back. "Amelia, you look like you walked out of a myth," she said. "Ethan's going to lose it when he sees you." I smiled, my reflection in the mirror a stranger in the best way. The dress hugged my body, its structured lines and plunging neckline radiating power, while the sweeping train promised drama. "Thanks, Lena," I said, squeezing her hand. "For everything." She raised an eyebrow, sensing the undercurrent in my voice. "You're up to something, aren't you?" "I know that look. Just wait," I said, my smile tightening. "It's going to be a day to remember." The estate was a vision. The ballroom, draped in ivory and gold, shimmered under the custom chandelier. Tables groaned under the weight of floral arrangements, and the scent of truffle risotto wafted from the kitchen. Outside, the cliffside gardens were strung with fairy lights, the ocean a glittering backdrop. Guests were already arriving, their murmurs of awe filtering up to the suite. I caught snippets of their conversations, words like extravagant and stunning, and felt a flicker of satisfaction. This was my stage, and I was ready to perform. Sophia poked her head in, her clipboard in hand. "Everything's on schedule. The press is in place discreetly as you asked. And," she hesitated, her eyes flicking to mine, "Diane and Claire are here. They're in the garden looking unsettled." "Good," I said, my voice calm but sharp. "Let them stew." As Lena helped me into my heels, my phone buzzed with a text from Harold. "Foundation paperwork is ready. Announcement scripted for the reception. Board meeting for Diane's company set for Monday. Anonymous, as requested." I typed a quick thank you and set the phone down. The pieces were in place. The charitable foundation in my parents' name would be my public triumph, a way to honor their legacy while signaling my wealth to the world. The board meeting, though, was my private weapon, a way to tighten the noose around Diane without her knowing who held the rope. The ceremony was moments away. I took a deep breath, centering myself, and walked to the window. Below, Ethan stood at the altar, his dark suit tailored to perfection, his smile nervous but radiant. My heart softened. He was my anchor, the one constant in this storm I'd created. I loved him more than I could put into words, and today I'd vowed to spend my life with him. But I'd also vowed to protect us, our future, our love, from anyone who tried to tear it apart. The music started, a soft swell of strings, and Lena handed me my bouquet. "Ready?" she asked. "More than ever," I said. The walk down the aisle felt like stepping into a dream. The guests turned, their faces a blur of smiles and gasps, but my eyes were locked on Ethan. His gaze met mine, and for a moment, the world fell away. No Diane, no Claire, no plans or schemes, just us. When I reached him, he took my hand, his voice low and reverent. "You're breathtaking, Amelia." "You're not so bad yourself," I whispered, and he grinned, the kind of grin that made my heart skip. The ceremony was perfect. We exchanged vows, our words simple but raw, each one a promise carved from the deepest parts of ourselves. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, Ethan kissed me, and the world erupted in applause. I let myself sink into the moment, his warmth grounding me, but in the back of my mind, I knew the real show was about to begin. The reception was a spectacle. The ballroom glowed, the champagne flowed, and the guests mingled under the chandelier's star-like light. I caught sight of Diane and Claire near the bar, their faces tight with forced smiles. Claire was snapping photos, no doubt curating her perfect Instagram moment, while Diane clutched a glass of wine, her eyes darting around the room. They knew something was off. They could feel the shift, even if they didn't understand it yet. As the first course was served, I stood, tapping my glass to get the room's attention. The chatter died down and all eyes turned to me. Ethan squeezed my hand under the table, his expression curious but trusting. I took a breath, my voice steady as I began. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate with us," I said, smiling at the sea of faces. This day means the world to Ethan and me, but it's also a chance to honor those who aren't here. My parents, who taught me what love and strength look like, left me a legacy I've carried quietly for years. Today, I'm proud to announce the Voss Family Foundation, a charitable organization funded with an initial $100 million to support education, healthcare, and community rebuilding. The room gasped, whispers rippling through the crowd. Ethan's hand tightened on mine, his eyes wide with shock. Diane's glass froze halfway to her lips and Claire's phone dropped to her lap. I pressed on, my voice clear and unwavering. This is just the beginning. I want to build a future that reflects the values my parents instilled in me. Kindness, resilience, and the courage to stand up for what's right. The applause was deafening, but I barely heard it. My eyes were locked on Diane and Claire, their faces pale, their composure cracking. They hadn't known. They hadn't even suspected. And now, the world knew I wasn't just Ethan's bride. I was Amelia Voss, heiress, philanthropist, and a force they couldn't control. As I sat down, Ethan leaned in, his voice low. "Amelia, $100 million? Why didn't you tell me?" I turned to him, my heart pounding. "I wanted to surprise you," I said softly. "I wanted you to know me first, not the money. Can we talk later? Just us?" He searched my face, then nodded, his expression a mix of awe and uncertainty. "Yeah, just us." The rest of the reception was a blur, dancing, toasts, laughter. But I felt Diane and Claire's eyes on me, their unease palpable. They'd underestimated me, and now they were scrambling to understand the new reality. But I wasn't done. The board meeting on Monday would shake Diane's world, and Claire's boutique was already in my crosshairs. They'd started this war, but I was winning it. As Ethan and I swayed to our first dance, his arms around me, I felt a flicker of peace. The battle wasn't over, but for now I had him, and that was enough. Tomorrow I'd face the fallout. Tomorrow I'd show them what power really looked like. The morning after the wedding, I woke in a hotel suite overlooking the ocean, Ethan's arm draped over me. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, painting the room in soft gold, and for a moment, I let myself bask in the quiet warmth of being his wife. His breathing was steady, his face peaceful in sleep, and my heart ached with how much I loved him. But as I slipped out of bed and stood by the window, the weight of yesterday's triumph and the battle still ahead settled over me. The Voss Family Foundation announcement had been a grenade, shattering Diane and Claire's perception of me. But it was only the first strike. Today, the real war began. I checked my phone while Ethan slept. A text from Harold. Board meeting for Diane's company is set for 10 a.m. tomorrow. Your proxy will attend anonymously. They're expecting a routine session. They'll be blindsided. Another from the investigator. Claire's boutique sale is finalized. She'll get the notice today. Call if you need more. I smiled, a cold satisfaction curling in my chest. The pieces were moving exactly as I'd planned. Ethan stirred, his voice groggy. Morning, Mrs. Hawthorne. He grinned, pulling me back to bed. You're up early. Plotting world domination already? I laughed, straddling his lap and kissing him softly. Something like that. Just thinking about yesterday. It was perfect, wasn't it? Beyond perfect, he said, his hands resting on my hips. But his eyes searched mine, a flicker of concern in them. That announcement, though. Amelia, why didn't you tell me about the money? 100 million. That's a lot. I took a breath, choosing my words carefully. I wanted you to love me for me, not my parents' fortune. I've kept it hidden for years, living off my own work. But yesterday it felt right to step into that part of myself. For us, for the future we're building. He nodded slowly, processing. I get it, I just wish you'd trusted me sooner. I don't care about the money, Amelia. I care about you. I know, I said, my throat tight. I trust you now. I promise, no more secrets. It wasn't entirely true. Not yet. I couldn't tell him about Diane and Claire. Not until the dust settled. I kissed him again, deeper this time, and for a moment, we lost ourselves in each other, the world fading away. But the world didn't stay quiet for long. By noon, we were back at our apartment, unpacking gifts and fielding congratulatory texts. Then my phone rang, Claire. I stepped into the kitchen to answer, keeping my voice neutral. Hello? Amelia, what the hell is going on? Her voice was shrill, panicked. I just got a notice that my boutique's been sold. Some anonymous investor bought it out from under me. Do you know anything about this? I leaned against the counter, my pulse steady. That's awful, Claire. How could that happen? Don't play dumb, she snapped. This has your name all over it. That stunt at the wedding, the foundation, the fancy venue. You're not who you said you were, are you? I let the silence stretch, savoring her desperation. I'm exactly who I've always been, Claire. Maybe you just didn't see me clearly. She sputtered, but I cut her off. I'm sorry about your boutique. Maybe it's a sign to rethink your priorities. I've got to go. Newlywed life, you know. I hung up before she could respond, my heart pounding with a mix of adrenaline and triumph. One down. Ethan walked in, catching the tail end of the call. Everything okay? He asked, his brow furrowed. Just Claire being Claire, I said, forcing a smile. Wedding stress, I guess. He didn't look convinced, but let it go, pulling me into a hug. Let's forget about family drama for a day, okay? Just you and me. I nodded, burying my face in his chest. But my mind was already on tomorrow's board meeting. Diane's reckoning was coming, and I needed to be ready. The next morning, I sat in a coffee shop across town, a laptop open to a secure video feed. Harold had arranged for a proxy to attend the board meeting, posing as a representative of one of my shell companies. I watched as Diane entered the boardroom, her posture rigid, her smile practiced but strained. She had no idea what was coming. The proxy, a sharp woman named Karen, wasted no time. On behalf of our client, who now holds a controlling interest in Hawthorne Realty, she began, we're proposing immediate changes to the company's leadership structure and financial oversight. Diane's face went pale. Controlling interest? She interrupted, her voice sharp. That's impossible. I would have known. Karen slid a folder across the table. The shares were acquired through multiple entities over the past weeks. It's all legal and binding. Our client is prepared to take a more active role unless certain conditions are met. The boardroom erupted in murmurs, and Diane's hands trembled as she opened the folder. I couldn't see the documents, but I knew what they contained. A detailed proposal to overhaul the company, including an audit of all financial transactions, especially those tied to her offshore account. It was a polite way of saying, we know what you've done and we can destroy you. Diane's voice was tight. Who is this client? I demand to know. Karen's smile was cool. They prefer anonymity. For now, I leaned back, my heart racing. Diane was cornered and she knew it. The board meeting ended with a vote to proceed with the audit, and I could see the panic in Diane's eyes as she gathered her things and left. She'd spend the next days scrambling, trying to cover her tracks, but it was too late. I had her. That evening I met with the investigator again. "The feds are circling closer," he said, handing me a USB drive. "This has everything. Emails, bank records, even a deposition from her fixer, who's ready to flip if immunity's on the table." "What do you want to do?" I took the drive, its weight heavy in my hand. "Nothing yet," I said. "I want her to sweat. Let her think she can still save herself." He nodded, a glint of respect in his eyes. "You're playing a long game." "It's the only way to win," I replied. When I got home, Ethan was waiting, his expression serious. "Amelia, we need to talk. Claire called me, freaking out about her boutique, and Mom's acting like her world's falling apart. What's going on?" My stomach dropped. I'd hoped to keep him out of this a little longer, but the truth was closing in. I sat him down, taking his hands. "Ethan, there's something I need to tell you. About your mom and Claire. About what they did." His eyes searched mine, wary but trusting. "What did they do?" I took a deep breath, and the story poured out. The dress, the prank, the cruelty they'd disguised as a test. I told him how I'd used my fortune to fight back, to take control of their worlds without them knowing it was me. I left out the worst of Diane's crimes, the ones that could land her in prison. That was a card I wasn't ready to play. Ethan's face darkened as I spoke, his hands tightening around mine. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "They did that to you?" he whispered finally. "My own family?" "I didn't want to hurt you," I said, my voice breaking, "but I couldn't let them think they could break me." He pulled me into his arms, his embrace fierce. "I'm so sorry, Amelia. I should have seen it. I should have protected you." "You couldn't have known," I said, tears stinging my eyes. "But I need you with me now. This isn't over." He pulled back, his jaw set. "What's next?" I looked at him, my heart swelling with love and resolve. "We finish it. Together." The air in our apartment felt heavy that night, the weight of Ethan's anger and my secrets pressing against the walls. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, his hands clenched, his green eyes stormy with betrayal. Not at me, but at his mother and sister. I'd laid out the truth about the dress, their cruelty, and my counteroffensive, but I'd held back the final piece, Diane's offshore account and the potential criminal fallout. That was a bomb I wasn't ready to detonate, not until I knew how Ethan would handle it. For now, he was with me, and that was enough to keep moving forward. "I can't believe they did that to you," he said, his voice low and raw. "My own family. How did I not see it? They're good at hiding who they are," I said, reaching for his hand. "But I see them now, and I'm not letting them hurt us again." He nodded, his jaw tight. "What's the next step?" I took a breath, choosing my words carefully. "Claire's boutique is gone. She's reeling. Diane's company is under pressure from the board meeting. They're both off balance, but they don't know it's me yet. I want to confront them, Ethan, face to face, lay it all bare." His eyes searched mine, a mix of admiration and worry. "You're sure? Once you do this, there's no going back." "I know," I said, my voice steady. "But they started this. I'm ending it." We spent the next day planning. I called Harold to confirm the final details of my control over Diane's company and the status of the Voss Family Foundation, which was already generating buzz in the press. The investigator sent a final report. Diane's fixer had agreed to testify if the feds offered immunity, and the evidence against her was airtight. I tucked the USB drive into my bag, a silent promise of what could come if she pushed me too far. But I hoped it wouldn't come to that. Not for Ethan's sake, but because I wanted to win this my way, with precision and control. The confrontation was set for the next afternoon at the Hawthorne estate. I told Diane and Claire it was a post-wedding family meeting to discuss the future. They agreed, probably expecting another chance to reassert their dominance. They had no idea what was coming. When we arrived, the estate loomed as imposing as ever, its manicured lawns and towering columns a testament to the Hawthorne name. Ethan's hand was steady in mine as we walked to the front door, but I could feel the tension in his grip. Diane greeted us in the foyer, her smile tight and her eyes wary. Claire stood behind her, arms crossed, her usual smirk replaced with a scowl. "Amelia, Ethan," Diane said, her voice dripping with false warmth. "What's this about? We're all family now, no need for formalities." I didn't smile back. "Let's sit," I said, gesturing to the sitting room, the same room where they'd shredded my dress. The irony wasn't lost on me. We settled onto the plush sofas, the fireplace crackling like a warning. Ethan sat beside me, his presence a quiet strength. I took a breath, my voice calm but unyielding. "I know what you did to my wedding dress," I began, locking eyes with Claire. "You called it a prank, a test. You laughed while you cut it to pieces." Claire's face flushed, but she opened her mouth to protest. I held up a hand, silencing her. "Don't. I have proof, your own words, posted online, bragging about it. You thought you could humiliate me, make me feel small. You were wrong." Diane's eyes narrowed. "Amelia, this is ridiculous. It was a misunderstanding, nothing more. You're blowing it out of proportion." "A misunderstanding?" I said, my voice rising slightly. "You held my arm while Claire destroyed something I loved. You called it a family tradition. But let's talk about family, Diane. Let's talk about your company." Her face went still, and I pressed on. "I own 51% of Hawthorne Realty now. I bought it through anonymous entities, and I can dismantle it with a single vote. Your board's already moving for an audit, and they're asking questions about your offshore accounts." Diane's wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. "You're lying," she whispered, but her voice trembled. "I'm not," I said, pulling a folder from my bag and sliding it across the table. "These are the share certificates. And this," I held up the USB drive, "has evidence of your financial misconduct. Enough to interest the authorities if it comes to that." Claire was shaking now, her eyes darting between me and her mother. "You bought my boutique, didn't you?" She spat. "You took everything from me." "You took my dress," I said, my gaze unwavering. "You tried to take my dignity. I just returned the favor." Ethan spoke for the first time, his voice low but firm. "Mom, Claire, how could you do this? Amelia's my wife. She's family. And you treated her like this?" Diane's composure cracked, tears welling in her eyes. "Ethan, we were protecting you. She's not one of us. She's Amelia Voss," I cut in. "Heiress to a fortune bigger than anything you've ever touched." I hid it because I wanted a real life, a real love. But you forced my hand, and now you know who I am. The room was silent, the weight of my words settling like dust. Claire sobbed, her face buried in her hands. Diane stared at the folder, her hands trembling. Ethan squeezed my knee under the table, a silent signal of his support. "I'm giving you a choice," I said. "Step back. Stay out of our lives. Diane, resign from your company quietly, and I'll make sure the audit doesn't destroy you. Claire, walk away from your schemes and start over. If you don't, I'll release everything. Every email, every transaction, every post. You'll lose more than a boutique or a company. You'll lose everything." Diane's voice was barely a whisper. "You'd ruin us?" "You tried to ruin me," I said. "I'm just better at it." Ethan stood, pulling me up with him. "We're done here," he said, his voice steady. "You hurt my wife. You don't get to be part of our lives unless you make this right." We walked out, leaving them in the wreckage of their own making. In the car, Ethan was quiet, his hands tight on the steering wheel. "I'm sorry," I said finally. "I didn't want it to come to this." He glanced at me, his eyes soft but resolute. "You did what you had to. I'm proud of you, Amelia, and I'm with you, no matter what." I leaned against him, the tension in my chest easing for the first time in weeks. The drive home was quiet, but it was a comfortable silence, the kind that comes when two people know they're unbreakable. In the days that followed, Diane resigned from Hawthorne Realty, citing personal reasons. The audit went forward, but I ensured it stopped short of criminal charges, for Ethan's sake, not hers. Claire disappeared from social media, her boutique shuttered, her influencer dreams in tatters. The Voss Family Foundation launched to glowing reviews, its first grants funding schools and hospitals in my parents' names. Ethan and I settled into our life together, stronger for the storm we'd weathered. The shredded dress still hung in my closet, a reminder of what I'd overcome. I'd walked through fire, and I'd come out the other side, not just a bride, but a woman who knew her worth, her power, and the love that made it all matter.